I was feeling nervous before, even more nervous now. I've got to follow that. That's not good. Tom and Claudia, thank you so much for that. And thank you to all of you today, parents, for coming in and supporting us on Parents' Day. It's my first. I've been looking forward to it for a long time, and especially getting the next bit over with. So bear with me. It may not surprise you to know that I wasn't a cool teenager. I sang alto as a 17-year-old in an all-boys choir, had goofier teeth than I have already, still have now, braces that resembled the approach to King's Cross Station, and such curly hair that when my mum made me comb it every morning, and she did, it formed a sort of crust around the top of my head. May I present Exhibit A, Your Honours? Pasty head, they call me. Bugs. Goofy. Teachers can be so cruel. Before you get your cameras out, I'll go to the next one. The thing my tormentors didn't know, and forget the slide for the time being, the guilty secret I kept hidden for them, was a troubling obsession with the top 40 singles chart. In an era when singles sold by the million and going straight to number one was an event worthy of mention on the 9 o'clock news, the ritual of hunkering down on a Sunday afternoon to hear Alan Fluff Freeman reveal the whereabouts of my latest favourite song, Goodbye to Love by the Carpenters, Rocket Man by Elton John, or Streets of London by Ralph McTell. Told you I wasn't cool. That programme was unmissable. I've been in recovery for a number of years now, but I'm comforted by conversations later in life that I've revealed I was not alone in my obsession. People seem to love lists and charts, especially in the form of a top 10 or a top 20 or such like. The number of lists that pop up as suggested viewing, even on the most respectable sites like the Independent newspaper, for example, reveals this. Don't forget that Bootham itself was in a list of top 10 value-for-money boarding schools in the Daily Telegraph in October 2015. And sites like BuzzFeed run some really bizarre lists. So I thought I'd do a little audience participation this morning to illustrate just how bizarre these have become. I'm going to tell you the titles of top 6 or 6 top something or others, and I'm going to ask you to decide whether this is a real list or one that I've just made up in my rather weird imagination. So here's the first one. 18 celebrities' children who look like Star Wars characters. What do you think? Do you think that is a real, or do you think that is a fake one? Put your hands up if you think that is a real site on BuzzFeed. Makes me wonder what's going on in your heads, I have to say. OK, the next one. 33 things you'll remember from your childhood spent in Inverness. 33. Ollie says yes. Hands up if you think that's a real one. Well, in fact, oops, it is. 33 things in Inverness. I've no idea how they got about those. OK, following the very famous site that I'm sure many of you have seen, 4 otters that look like Benedict Cumberbatch. That is a real site. Look it up, it's good. Does Dr. Watson have one too? How about perhaps 4 hedgehogs that look like Martin Freeman? Hands up if you think that's a real site. Oh, it is. OK, 12 vegetables that can kill. Real site, hands up. 17 historical figures who suffered from wicked flatulence. If you don't know what that means, ask your parents later, they'll tell you. I'm not going to do so. Hands up if you think that's a real site. What a bunch of weirdos. OK. And finally, 14 celebrities fiercely improved with Cara Delevingne's eyebrows. Hands up with this one. OK. Well, here's Cara. And here's Daniel Radcliffe. And here's Daniel Radcliffe with Cara's eyebrows. That is a genuinely... What do people have the time to do? I couldn't have gone around to this. Quite extraordinary. In fact, I've found entire sites made up of top tens, such as top 10 odd crisp flavours, which include the mouth-watering delights of the Belgian cucumber and goat and British Cajun Squirrel. Who did the taste test for that one? Or there's another one called Top 10 Signs that Paul McCartney actually died in 1966. The Top 10 Bizarre Experiments with Nature has at number 1 this cat that was bred to glow in the dark. And I especially enjoyed Top 10 American Humorous Church Signs, of which these are my favourite examples. Little biblical knowledge required for that one. It just goes to show that Suzanne is going to be the next United Nations leader, given her particular skills. However, my favourite was Top 10 Children's Names That Were Banned, the best of which reveals the Swedish parents who decided to let their baby choose his own name, waited till he was old enough to bash a computer keyboard, and called him what came out. So welcome to the world. Well, this. Or Albin, for short. They were fined by the Swedish authorities. So why all this stuff about top tens? In truth, it's just a gratuitously silly way to introduce to you my theme for this morning. Perhaps the question I've been asked most often over the past few weeks, as I've met parents at various functions, has been, how's your first year at Bootham been? Closely followed by something like, and what do you make of the school? With a slightly suspicious raise of the eyebrow. So this morning I thought I'd provide my answer in the form of my top 10, a top 10 of mental snapshots that I've taken of Bootham over the course of this year. First one, we've heard about this one already, was the morning before the first day of term, if I recall rightly, and I opened my study door in response to a robust knock to find 2 smiling young men, both aged 16. They told me they had written a revision guide to GCSE astronomy because they believed that the one they'd been issued wasn't good enough and they wanted future generations to have something better. They were a little bit more modest than that, I exaggerate. My first introduction to the confidence, sense of responsibility and the free thinking of the Bootham teenager. Other similar knocks on the door over the year have led to conversations with students about uniform, about whether my views on Donald Trump were a little unkind. They weren't. And whether the introduction of electronic keycards was tantamount to Big Brother-style surveillance by the back door. All these conversations have been respectful, without fear, either theirs or mine, and valid. And I've never been in a school that positively encourages such habits. Second picture is of a staff meeting, and a group of teaching and key support staff, some brandishing marker panes, grouped around large pieces of paper and wrestling with the question, what would your ideal Bootham student be like at the age of 18? Look around you. Their response was fascinating, especially when compared with the response of my colleagues in 2 previous schools where I've carried out the same activity. Top of the list at Bootham, not hard-working or academically successful or motivated or ambitious, as those other schools had suggested first and foremost, rather kind, comfortable in their own skin, socially aware and generous of spirit. What a privilege to be leading a school that prizes such inbuilt important things above success for its own sake. Of course, well, you'll see that all the hard work, successful, ambitious and well-motivated stuff is really important too, but only as the means to the end of a bigger pro-social goal, and that's exciting. Equally exciting to me was the result of the school's mock election as my third picture, summed up in a snapshot in my mind of the final slide of James Ratcliffe's election night PowerPoint that was released at 1 minute past 10 o'clock. It wasn't the fact that Labour had, in effect, won the Bootham constituency that struck me, It was more the fact that it was the only independent school that I know of, indeed that I've ever known of, where the vote had been tipped more towards the left than the right. Further indication, if any were needed, that our students are prepared to go against the flow and to think for themselves. Another of the characteristics at the top of the staff list. As a Quaker school, we hope to see many of them in the vanguard of change, whatever their political persuasion, but change for all and prioritising those who need it most. Fourth one keeps us in here. And a group of over 150 parents gathered to listen to Dick Moore, an excellent speaker on adolescent mental health. And I know his talk will live long in the memory for both students and adults. This snapshot reveals, sadly, one of the increasing preoccupations of the life of all schools, ours included. It also, and rather more tellingly, shows the keenness of our parents to work with us, taking advantage both of the wisdom we can bring from visiting experts and our own inbuilt experience and expertise in managing teenagers. As a staff here, between us we must have dealt with tens of thousands of young people over our combined careers. We know in a way that parents cannot possibly how almost every story ends, and almost every one ends much more positively than at sometimes it can appear, and we fear. September the 13th is the next occasion when we host a nationally revered expert, the brilliant Natasha Devon, who will be speaking to both students and parents about mental health, body image and self-esteem. She is superb, so please don't miss it. The next mental photo is closely related to some of those I've mentioned already. It's a picture of one of our teachers sitting quietly on a bench with a student who was struggling with real difficulties. My colleague was talking firmly and supportively with the student about how they were feeling, challenging some of their behaviour whilst trying to understand it, just doing everything possible to keep that young person growing and on the straight and narrow. Skilled, impassioned, dedicated, self-sacrificial care, evident in this school at every turn. No one epitomises this more to me than Suzanne Hall, who, as we've heard already, retires early, she is always keen to point out, next week. Suzanne's been a vital member of staff at Bootham for 18 years, for the past 5 of those as deputy head. I've always argued that it is the most difficult job to do in a school, probably because I had to do it myself at one point, as it involves essentially running the school whilst acting both as nemesis and best friend to students and occasionally staff in the same pair of trousers or the same skirt. Getting the balance right takes skill, judgment, compassion and a thick skin. Doing it all in a Quakerly spirit, constantly looking for the that of God in every single child, whilst trying to ensure the maintenance of high standards. That makes it doubly challenging. Suzanne manages it brilliantly, and I've learnt a great deal from her that will, I hope, stand me in good stead, and her example, her kindness, and her deep compassion. And we wish her all the very best indeed for a long and outstandingly happy early retirement. Thank you. Sixth, my office affords me a wonderful view of activity in the playground and beyond. Sometimes I prefer not to see what that reveals, as some members of lower seniors know only too well. But mostly it brings a smile to my face. This is in no way better exemplified than at the end of last term, on the first warm sunny day, when I looked up to see a group of sophisticated college twos happily getting in touch with their inner 8-year-old, not difficult for some of them, through a mirth-filled and only slightly violent outbreak of the children's games Duck, Duck, Goose and Blocky 1, 2, 3. It was at that point that I instituted the Twitter hashtag #OnlyAtBootham, which I might have had cause to employ on several occasions since then, not least when observing the good humour, resilience and sheer competitive guts evident in the freezing and drenching conditions at Sports Day this past week. Nextly, 7th I think, I have a mental photograph of the auditorium a few weeks back and a number of College 1 students summoning up all their courage to do a 20 to 25 minute presentation to a small but attentive audience on the findings of their EPQ, their extended project qualification, then taking questions from their audience. I wonder how many of you get a shiver down your spine at your ages thinking about having to do that. If you haven't seen one, you won't know how remarkable it is to see both confident and shy young people lit up by their expertise and speaking with passion about something that they are really interested in or matters to them enormously. I personally saw talks this year on whether it would be feasible to mine asteroids for water to support deep space travel, whether there is any hope for a cure for Alzheimer's disease through its possible links to mad cow disease, to what extent young people's mental health is enhanced or damaged by visual social media, and whether the Second World War destruction of Dresden by Bomber Command could be morally justified. Others I didn't see covered topics such as the role of the UN in the Korean War, the relevance of fairy tales in modern society, facial transplants, the comparison of the musicals Hamilton and Les Miserables as effective adaptations of novels, and the benefits or otherwise of the Indian space programme. Amazing, inspiring and fascinating stuff, replicated in the schoolrooms and seniors through their scholars programme and through the HPQ. Scholarship is, without doubt, alive and well at Bootham. 3 more to go. This one is a collage made up of all the pictures you've just seen of Bootham students achieving marvellous stuff. It struck me several times just how modest Bootham can be about the success of its students, so that many current parents, students and staff, let alone the outside world, don't know the full extent of it. While we don't want to play an ostentatious concerto on our own corporate trumpet, we do at least deserve to give it a bit of a toot now and again. So I asked my colleagues earlier this week to send me through a note of any achievements by groups or individuals on a national, regional, or local level that I might bring to your attention this morning. I was inundated, so much so, in fact, that I knew I could not begin to do justice to them all. You would have been listening until lunchtime if I hadn't, and nobody wants that. And then I realised that Tom and Claudia had just stolen my thunder and done almost all of it for me. So I'll restrict myself with time going on to just a few examples of more unsung heroes and heroines. The Year 7 and 8 banner makers had their wonderful banner exhibited at the Glastonbury Festival last week in the VIP area. 7 faithful members of the World Shaper Action Group became Oxfam Youth Ambassadors. Benedict Santos Piercy was selected for a British Film Institute documentary making programme. Dami Io Vaughan is a published journalist. And Becca Tierney visited the House of Lords earlier this week as one of 10 winners out of 2,000 applicants of the Duke of Westminster's Award for Britain's various cadet services. She's off to South Africa next week as part of her prize. Between the head Reeves and myself, we've given you just a brief snapshot of the range of achievement of our students this year, testimony, in part at least, to the breadth of our hugely enriching activities programme, with its bewildering range of often eclectic options. Cheese Dreams remains my favourite. Back to this hall for number 9. One of the great joys of my first year at Bootham has been the discovery of Quaker silence. The value to our community of sitting together in silence, perhaps with our own thoughts and explorations of life, perhaps just being still, or perhaps reflecting on the themes that we are grappling with together, is a profound experience and something which cannot be underestimated. I never cease to be amazed by the stillness that can be achieved by almost 500 active, even in some cases hyperactive young people, something which symbolises for me that it is only in connection with others that each individual is able to bring out the best in him or herself. So important does this practice remain to Bootham that we have extended it to the wider school community with the inception of Reflect 30, our monthly Saturday morning meeting for worship open to all members of our community, parents, staff, students, friends of Bootham and old scholars. Parents will be more than welcome to join the 70 or so regular attenders when we resume on the first Saturday of next term. Final snapshot is a very simple and oft-repeating one. Taken, for example, on a miserable wet Saturday morning in November, a bright frosty one in the middle of February, and a warm sunny one in early May. That of students and staff, sometimes sprinting, sometimes plodding, and more often than not, walking purposefully into school. Saturday morning before school is my favourite time of the week. It's the time when it's become my habit and my delight to stand out on the steps at the main entrance and simply greet or chat to colleagues and students as they arrive, and notice those that take a different route into school on a Saturday to avoid me. You know who you are. These conversations, as well as the tone and the nature of them, epitomise for me the friendliness of this community, its openness and its willingness to take everyone at face value and to value all, even me, equally. It underlines, so importantly for me, that Bootham's life and its enduring success is founded firmly, unashamedly and tellingly on a bedrock of relationships, on the building of a living community. Nothing matters more. These 10 snapshots are just representative of the hundreds, even thousands of others taken by my mental camera over the course of the year. In fact, I've always seen it as the important job of a head, not just to take those mental snapshots, but put them together into a bigger picture like this. As you can see, this is a picture of Yoda, or rather, a picture of Yoda this is. And it's more than that. It's a picture of Yoda made up of hundreds of smaller stills from the Star Wars films. I know that because this very picture was on one or other of my son's bedroom walls for many years. So what does the bigger photo mosaic of Bootham look like? Well, what do all these hundreds of snapshots add up to? Let's take a section. It adds up to a school where students really achieve, academically according to their varying abilities and in the huge range of activities that they undertake. Some of the students I've met here are among the very brightest and most hardworking that I've come across in my 30 years as a teacher. Many of the staff are amongst the most skilled and committed practitioners it's been my pleasure to work with over that time too. It adds up to a school full of life, activity and energy, offering a wealth of opportunities for our students to discover new talents, passions and interests that will enrich their lives, not just now, but long into the future. It adds up to a school where people really matter and where relationships are generally both strong and mutually respectful, where people regularly and uncomplainingly go the extra mile for each other. It's the strength of relationships that I know for a fact many other schools envy. It adds up to a school that understands exam results, university places, and all its activity in pursuit of a rounded education, totally vital though those are, not as an end in themselves, but as a stepping stone to a wider and a more profound goal, that of producing young people whose work, relationships and lives will make the world a better place for their fellow human beings as well as themselves. It doesn't add up to perfection, of course. Far from it. As a community of over 600 imperfect and flawed young people and adults, perfection is simply not an option. But it is a community that wants to become a better version of itself, enhancing and amplifying the things it does so well, and addressing those things that it aspires to be and is not yet. There's much we can all do better, but a real desire to do that. Nonetheless, my perception as a relative newcomer, echoed almost universally by those who sense it very quickly when they come to visit us for the first time, is that this is a pretty remarkable school, that it feels different and it acts more authentically than almost any that other people know of. And it's easy to forget that when you have been here for a while. It has been my enormous pleasure to be, as it were, its photographer-in-chief over the past year, and my equally huge privilege to have been entrusted to lead it into what is undoubtedly an exciting future, over what promise to be interesting and challenging times ahead. Today, we're here to celebrate a year in the life of this lovely school, acknowledge each individual's contribution to the life of the community that it has created, and that community's contribution to each member's growth and development. I look forward to many more such days in the future, as we seek to further develop an education that encourages individual lives to speak fluently, authentically, and with conviction of strong values, hard work, and considerable achievement, all in pursuit of a better world for everyone. What better basis for a flourishing life and a flourishing school could there be? Thank you for listening.